Okay, maybe that wasn't such an elegant solution.
We just recently bought this sailboat that had been sitting abandoned for 15 years and looked like complete crap. We want to fix her up and sail to Alaska and then through the Northwest Passage to Greenland. Welcome along. So why am I making this big hole? Well, this is where we will be installing a diesel day tank. But what's a day tank and why do we want one? A day tank, it's like an intermediary tank between the main diesel tank and the engine and the other equipment that need diesel. It's usually placed high enough so that it's above the engine at all points of heel. That means that it gravity feeds fuel to the engine, negating many possibilities for air leaks in the fuel system. It also gravity feeds our future diesel drip stove, which makes the stove completely independent and skips the need for an electric fuel pump or any kind of electricity for the diesel stove. And when properly built, the filters between the main diesel tank and the day tank can be used to polish the contents of the main tank, cleaning the diesel of any crap or water that might have found its way in there.
So that was probably not the most elegant way of doing it, but you have to do with what you got. And these are not the final dimensions for this hole anyway. I made the hole a little bit too small now, so that when the tank is finished, I can then make a nicer cut and also finalize the hole so that the tank sits here like super snug, so that it's protected by these sides. But just for the measuring, I just made like a crappy hole like this right now. And at least I didn't cut through any of these hoses here. Obviously I'm gonna have to relocate the hoses. I'll just run them. I have to like make it a little bit ugly and run them like here, or maybe I'll run them below the tank. That might actually be a better option.
1 week later.
Boom! The tank is ready. It's back from welding. We have a bunch of fittings. Now we're just gonna drop it in. I've also made the hole ready, and we'll put it in there. It's a pretty good fit. I moved the heating duct and so on, and we had these small tabs made here so that it's like really well supported. And there we go. Now we just screw all of the fittings in and hope it all still fits. And down here I still need to clean this area here, but you see there's a hole for all the valves, and I hope that I can still thread them in.
I thought that I had all the needed fittings, but the reality was that I was always missing some small critical part. So whenever I thought I'd be finished, I found out that I was missing one little thing and I had to order it and wait for a few days. But then finally came the day that I had everything that I needed. There were just two small things that I wanted to do. First, I just wanted to investigate the main tank and take a fuel sample from it before pumping anything from it into the day tank. We have around 100 gallons of 15 years old fuel in the main tank, and I was suspicious of its condition and wanted to check whether we could still possibly use it. I also had to install a connection for the day tank fuel overflow into the main tank. The diesel tank is open. Let's take a sample. First I'm just going to try and feel the bottom of the tank. It's gonna be no other way than get your hands dirty. Then I'm gonna put this all the way at the bottom.
The bottom of the tank feels good. I don't feel anything there. There is no growth, no nothing. It's a little bit slimy, but nothing else. It's just red diesel. I mean, there's nothing. I don't think there's any moisture in there. I think it would be pretty much good to just use it straight away. Daily skincare routine. We can polish this fuel, but there's not gonna be any difference. No water.
But it would take a while.
It only takes like it actually only takes a few seconds. 5 minutes max. Alright, now I'm gonna drill a hole here for the day tank overflow. It's gonna be here.
Then I just had to put in the fitting for the fuel overflow, and we'd finally have the moment of truth. Will it actually work?
This is actually a nylon fitting because I couldn't find an aluminum fitting. Or actually, yeah, this is the best that I could find. But nylon should be fine with there we go.
The next day.
So we have a whole lot of valves and hoses. The heater valves and the spare valves are not connected yet, but it's very nice and shiny down there. Now we are just going to run the fuel polishing component of the system. So I want to see whether the pump can actually lift up and prime the system, because the main tank is quite a bit lower than where the pump is sitting. The pump should be able to do that, but I just want to make sure. If it can't do that, then I actually do have a hand pump that I've connected in line so that I can prime the system with that. And I'm gonna run it and see how it works, and we will probably cycle the contents of the fuel tank through at least a few times. That's despite of us taking this fuel sample yesterday and finding out that it's pretty much perfect. You know, the fuel in here actually looks very good. The bottle has a light yellow tint to it, so that's why it's not as bright red as it actually is. But yeah, the fuel is perfect, so actually we don't really need the polishing at this point. We have 100 gallons of 15 years old diesel in there, and despite of all the naysayers who are saying, oh, the tank is going to be full of all kinds of growth and everything, well, there was nothing in there. And that's actually been my experience with diesel fuel in general, that if you have this old style diesel fuel with no bio component in it, if it's pure fossil fuel, then even old fuel can be in like really good condition. Let's run this. Oh yeah, there we go. I think I see some small pieces of debris in there. So maybe it's good to let it cycle for a little bit and get rid of all of that. Even though yesterday when I put my hand inside the tank and felt around the bottom, I didn't really feel any sediment or debris or anything. But you know, this is a nice thing to do. It kind of makes you feel good, I think, to polish the fuel for a day or two. But overall, I'm really pretty happy with this system. I think it turned out really nice. I'm just gonna go through all the parts for those who are interested in the technical details. And let's actually start from the main fuel tank. So there you can see these 3 fuel hoses, and we are using all of them. They are all connected to the diesel day tank, and one of them is the fuel intake line, and it actually comes here, and here I have just a normal fuel bulb. It's a diesel specific bulb, and this one you can basically use to prime the system. So if I push here, it actually cycles diesel through, and it actually can be used as an emergency pump. The thing with these bulbs is that they actually pump a surprising amount of fuel, so you can use it as an emergency pump. If the electric pump stops working, you squeeze the bulb like 100 times and you have actually several liters of fuel in the day tank. But anyway, so the fuel intake hose, it comes here to these big filters, and then it goes to the electric pump. So the big filters here are on the vacuum side of the electric pump, and that's not optimal for the function of the pump, but it's optimal for the function of the filters, because if you place the filters after the electric pump, then the electric pump, it emulsifies the diesel. So if there's water in it, it emulsifies the whole thing, and the filters don't work that well. So if you look at the manuals for these Raycor filters, they actually say that you should place them on the vacuum side of an electric pump. Then from the electric pump, the fuel goes into this 3-way valve, and basically this valve you use to select whether the fuel goes into the day tank, or then whether it goes into this line and directly back into the main diesel tank. The day tank also has this overflow fuel line, so when the tank is full and if you leave the pump running, then this hose will take the excess back to the main tank. And actually I was planning to use this function here for the diesel polishing, so I originally was not planning to put in a 3-way valve for the for fuel polishing. So I was just going to always fill the day tank so that it's completely full, and then the excess would run into the main tank, and that way if you keep the electric pump on, then you are cycling through the contents of the main tank. And while that seems like a good idea, I didn't want to do that in the end for fuel polishing, because I was afraid that if for some reason you leave the fuel polishing function on for a really long time, and if for some reason the excess, the overflow hose somehow gets kinked, or if it somehow gets blocked, then what's gonna happen is that you are effectively going to pump the contents of your whole main diesel tank into the sea through the vent hose, because then if the overflow hose doesn't work, then you're going to pressurize this tank, or this tank is going to be full and the diesel has to go out some way, and it's going to go out through the vent hose and into the sea, and I really don't want that. I just want to completely outrule that option or that possibility. So that's why we have this 3-way valve, so I can choose whether the diesel goes into the day tank or back into the main tank. So if I choose that the diesel goes into the day tank, then it's gonna fill up the day tank, and this hose here is just a vent hose for the day tank,
and this one is for the overflow, like I said, and this one is the engine return line, so the excess fuel from the engine is gonna come back into here. And this is the side gauge right here, and this is some kind of special tubing, it's fire resistant, whatever. And here on top we also have this big inspection hatch, which I think you should really have on all diesel and water tanks, just to be able to clean this thing out if you really have to. And this one also functions as an emergency access to the tank, so if everything else fails, the electric pump fails and the spare electric pump fails, because I have an identical spare electric pump. So if that fails and if the fuel bulb also fails and you can't fill the day tank, well, then you can just open this inspection hatch and pour some diesel in there. So that works for that as well. And down here then we have the valves. So this one is just a drain valve to drain the bottom, all the way from the bottom of the tank. If you have some crap in there, you can drain it out from here. I'm gonna attach a hose to that so you can drain directly into a container. Then the one up from there is for the engine, and then there's two more normal valves here, and these are for heaters. So the heater valves are above the engine valve, so that you don't accidentally starve the engine of fuel by running the heater. And then this valve here is for the side gauge. So when you want to check the level of fuel here inside the day tank, you open the valve, but you should also close it when you are not checking the fuel level anymore. That's just kind of like a safety feature. I wanted to have valves on each of these connections that are at the bottom of the tank, and as you can see at the top of the tank, we don't have valves here. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit technical here about the tank, but I think this is a really good system to have on almost any kind of a boat. But I do have to warn you that in the end it was kind of, I mean, it's a simple system in a way, but it was kind of expensive to build up like all of this. Just the fuel hoses and the fittings alone were like really surprisingly expensive. So the tank itself, for all of this cost, for all of this system, the tank itself was maybe like 1/3 of the cost or so. So be prepared to spend some money if you do go